Chapters 16 and 17. Chapter 16 is called Babylon Boozers. This is another picture chapter that has a lot of photos of famous actors and actresses that were notorious drinkers and alcoholics and drug users. If you get a copy of the book, you can probably read through that chapter and see a lot of sad and haunting images of very vibrant people, and some of them definitely look like they were going downhill. So now we're on to Chapter 17, Lost Boy. Ted Tatslav's The Window in 1949 was Bobby Driscoll's best movie, made when the irresistible kid star was 12 years old. Driscoll plays Tommy Woodry, a boy from a working-class New York family. When seen today, this gripping suspense thriller about the paranoia adults inspire in children takes on a somber, bitterly ironic resonance. At one point, Tommy's mother, Barbara Hale, forbids him to go out in their modest Lower East Side tenement apartment. He replies, "There's no place for me to go." After a brilliant and promising early career, a movie star at 6, an Oscar winner at 11, 30 films to his credit, most of them made with the top stars of Hollywood, by the age of 17, Driscoll had become a junkie has-been, arrested many times on various charges. In 1968, his corpse was discovered in an abandoned tenement in New York's Lower East Side, the locale of the most impressive film. At the time of the grisly discovery, the body was not identified, and the Oscar winner, who had earned $60,000 a year, was buried in a pauper's grave. Bobby Driscoll was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 1937. When he was 6, his family moved to California. A barber cutting the child's hair was adamant this cute kid should be in pictures. A visit to MGM for an audition proved the barber knew his beans. Bobby was given a part in Lost Angel, starring Margaret O'Brien, the cutesy pie kitty sensation of the day. O'Brien was also destined never to graduate to adult roles, but her life was spared the tragedy that beset Bobby's. A little ace at memorizing lines, Bobby was also a spontaneous natural actor. He was soon being shuttled from studio to studio. He appeared alongside Ann Baxter in Lloyd Bacon's Sunday Dinner for a Soldier at Fox, then with Veronica Lake and Lillian Gish in Miss Susie Slagles, and with Alan Ladd in OSS, both at Paramount. When he worked in So Goes My Love at Universal, he made a great impression on the film's veteran leads. Myrna Loy remarked, "Oh, he has so much charm. If Don Amici and I aren't on our toes all the time, the audience will be looking at the youngster and ignoring us." Amici said, "Oh, he's got a great talent. I've worked with a lot of child players in my time, but none of them bore the promise that seems inherent in young Driscoll." His boyish appeal is also much evidence in this day in His boyish appeal is also much in evidence in From This Day Forward with Joan Fontaine, The Happy Time with Charles Boyer, The Scarlet Coat with Cornel Wilde and George Sanders, and When I Grow Up with Robert Preston. In this last one, Bobby manages to run away from home, something he threatened to do in several other movies. In 1946, when he signed up for Walt Disney's Song of the South, Bobby became Disney's first flesh-and-blood contract player. In it, he portrays Little Johnny, who lives on his grandmother's plantation. His companion is the great Hattie McDaniel. As the tale unfolds, Uncle Remus, played by James Baskett, tells Johnny stories to keep him from running away from home. Their moral, as summed up by Remus for the child, is, "You can't run away from trouble, there ain't no place for that. Or there ain't no place that far." Then too bad the real-life Driscoll didn't listen to Uncle Remus. This beautiful and delightful movie was a major money spinner for Disney when released, and it made further piles when reissued in 1956 and 1972. It should come back every year. Studio personnel have been quoted to the effect that Bobby's charm worked wonders on grumpy old Disney. Some animators stated that the boss seemed to have fallen in love with the boy. There may be truth in this. If so, it was a love which deepened with the successive, hefty box office returns of the films Driscoll made for Uncle Walt. All 5 of them were big bucks hits. In Melody Time in 1948, Bobby asks Roy Rogers why the coyotes howl. The cowboy then unfolds the rousing tale of Pecos Bill, a boy raised by coyotes. In So Dear to My Heart, released the same year, Bobby was joined by veterans Beulah Bondi, Harry Carey, and Burl Ives. In reviewing this film, Times critic wrote, "Bobby Driscoll is a rarity among child actors. When relaxed, he is an attractive kid. When relaxed, he's..." Okay, hold on, what is this? "When relaxed, he is an attractive kid, and when called upon to act, he is not at all repellent." The non-repellent kid received a Special Academy Award as the Outstanding Juvenile Actor of 1949 for his work in So Dear to My Heart and The Window. In Disney's 1950 Treasure Island, Filmed in England, Bobby gave one of his most accomplished performances. It was superior in every way to that of Jackie Cooper in the same role of Jim Hawkins in MGM's 1934 version of the story. Disney's enthusiasm was returned. Driscoll seemed genuinely fond of Uncle Walt. He took direction better than any child performer within memory. Everyone at the studio sang his praises. In 1953, his voice was used for that of Peter Pan, and his acted performance in the title role was filmed, then rotoscoped for the animated Peter Pan. When the Peter Pan from Iowa started growing up in real life, became an adolescent and developed acne, the adorable kid star turned into a surly and belligerent teenager. He was offered few roles. Bobby appeared once as a teenager in a guest spot in the Loretta Young TV show. He was 19 when he married Marilyn Brush in 1956. They had 3 children, but the marriage ended with a painful separation. 1956 was also the year his life and career turned into a mudslide. Bobby and Buddy were booked on felony narcotics charges. Dressed in torn jeans and a dirty sweater, he was arrested at his Pacific Palisades home. He was still a very handsome young man. His mother later stated, "Drugs changed him. He didn't bathe, his teeth got loose. He had an extremely high IQ, but the narcotics affected his brain. We didn't know what it was. He was 19 before we knew." After a 3-year absence, he returned to the screen in 1958 in a B programmer, Bernard Gerard's Party Crashers. By a curious coincidence, his co-star was the lobotomized Frances Farmer, making her benumbed comeback after 16 years away from the movies. The Party Crashers was to prove the last film for both of these tragic figures. In 1959, when sheriff's officers noted needle marks on his arms and found Bobby in possession of a narcotics outfit, he was arrested for heroin use and jailed as an addict. In 1960, he was booked on a charge of assault with a deadly weapon. Driscoll said he had been washing a friend's car when some hecklers annoyed him. He appears to have pistol-whipped one of the bunch. Oh, God. Driscoll claimed that the man had bumped into the gun. Well, that's a good excuse. In early 1961, he was arrested for robbing an animal clinic. Later that year, he was arrested for forging a stolen check. And on various narcotics charges, he was sent to serve a 6-month term at the Narcotics Rehabilitation Center of the Chino State Penitentiary. The accused drug addict told the courtroom, "I had everything. Was earning more than $50,000 a year working steadily with good parts. Then I started putting on all my spare time in my arm. I was 17 when I first experimented with the stuff, mostly heroin, because I had the money to pay for it. Now no one will hire me because of my arrests. I'm looking forward to the coming months at Chino." After his release, Bobby dropped out of sight. He drifted around and eventually landed in New York, on the Lower East Side, which was then a hippie, junkie drug haven, or, well, drug heaven, depending on how you look at it. By then, he was a wired speed freak, cadging money from acquaintances, and on March 30th, 1968, 2 children playing in a deserted tenement near Avenue A discovered the corpse of a young man surrounded by religious objects and other litter. No ID was on the body, but tracks were on the arm. Methadone in the bloodstream. Then the unidentified stiff was fingerprinted, then buried on Hart Island off the Bronx, New York's Potter's Field. 19 months later, Disney executives received phone calls from Bobby's mother. His dad was dying and calling for his son. She had gone to the FBI for assistance, to no avail. Peter Pan was still missing. Through the efforts of the Disney people and a Los Angeles County law agency, it was discovered through a fingerprint check that it had been Bobby's corpse, which had been found in New York that previous year and buried in a pauper's grave. The discovery was made 2 weeks after Daddy Driscoll had died. 3 years later, Disney revived Song of the South. It made more money than ever before. Bobby was not there to witness the great appreciation of this film work by a whole new generation of fans and the glad tidings the revival brought to Disney's accountants. When asked how she felt about the revival of Song of the South, Mrs. Driscoll replied, "It will be painful to see him on the screen, but it will be nice, all the same. He was such a fine boy. Please tell people that no woman ever had a finer, more generous son." Bye-bye, Bobby. That is the end of the chapter, and thank you for listening.